Welcome, everyone, to the fourth webinar in the Language Access Continuing Education series. My name is Susan Clifford, and I work as the Language Access Coordinator at the UNC Institute for the Study of the Americas in Chapel Hill. We see language access as a practice that benefits all of our communities. Multilingual staffing and interpretation services are essential for community members who speak languages other than English to have meaningful access to services, inclusion in government agencies, and representative leadership. And when multilingual environments are supported, local governments, nonprofits, and other institutions are able to work with and learn from everyone in their community. So as we deepen our language access work, we recognize the need to explore current and historical forces affecting language, particularly languages such as Haitian Creole and indigenous languages from Latin America, like Quiche, which are increasingly spoken by immigrants living and working in North Carolina. Now I would like to welcome Professor Manuela Tahay. Manuela Tahay is a Maya Quiche educator and community organizer from Nahuala, Guatemala. Professor Tahay teaches Maya Quiche language and culture with over a decade of experience working with beginning to advanced students. She currently teaches Quiche language and culture at the University of Texas at Austin and at Tulane University's Maya Language Institute. Previously, she taught at Vanderbilt University. Professor Tahay has contributed significantly to the development of teaching materials for Quiche learners and has presented at numerous conferences and universities, including Yale University, Duke University, and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Welcome, Professor Tahay. So, Professor Tahay, please tell us about yourself, why the Quiche Maya language is important to you, and what led you to teach Quiche.
Sakirik o no kilalak, Mashtiosh chechalak o alak warash pawitsijonib. Bueno, muchas gracias por esta oportunidad.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Manuela Tahay.
Soy profesora en la Universidad
I'm a professor at the University of Austin here in Texas. And also I have worked in the Vanderbilt University, and I've been collaborating with universities like Kansas, Chicago, University of Chicago, and I've also been a part of workshops from Stanford University. And for me, the Quiche language is very important. Why do I say that it's important? Because language, indigenous language, or mother language, is the source of transmission of culture. Here in history, in the history of Guatemala, during colonialism, they burnt a lot of documentation. The documentation that had the history of the Mayan people. But
través del idioma,
through language,
las historias que estaban
the
escritas
stories that were
o
written
que fueron destruidos,
or
fueron
that were
quemados,
destroyed or
las
burnt,
historias las
the
podemos
stories,
escuchar
we
hoy
can
en
hear
día,
them these days,
porque a
today,
través del idioma
because
se ha
through
ido transmitiendo
language,
de
they have been
generación en
transmitted
generación.
generation to
Por eso es que
generation.
para mí
And that
es
is
muy
why, for me,
importante
it's
el
so
idioma
important.
quiché,
The Quiche
porque el
language is
idioma
so important
nos muestra
because
la
language
identidad de
shows
un
us
pueblo,
the
la
identity of a
identidad de un
people,
país.
the identity of a country.
Acá, en las
Here
comunidades
in the
indígenas,
indigenous communities,
alrededor del fuego, la
around
familia
the
se
fire, the family
sienta en el
sits
momento de comer, de desayunar,
when it's time to
almorzar,
eat, to
cenar.
have breakfast, have lunch,
Y en
have
este
dinner.
momento
And in that
es un
moment,
momento de
it's a
diálogo,
moment
es
of
un
dialogue.
momento de
It's a
historia.
moment
El
of
papá
story,
empieza
of history.
a narrar
The father
historias de
starts
los
telling
antepasados,
stories of the
cómo era la
ancestors.
vida hace
How
mucho.
was
Entonces,
life
para mí
long
es
ago?
muy
And so
importante
for
el
me, it's
idioma
very
quiché,
important, the Quiche
porque si un
language,
idioma
because
indígena
if an indigenous
muere,
language
es porque
dies,
también la
it's
cultura, la
because also the
identidad
culture,
muere.
the identity
Tanto la
dies.
cultura como el
Both the
idioma
culture
van de la
and the
mano.
language go hand in hand.
Y también, ¿por qué decidí
And
enseñar
why did
quiché?
I decided to teach
Para
Quiche?
mí, el enseñar el
For
idioma,
me, teaching the language,
también estoy dando a conocer
I'm
mi
also
cultura,
teaching my
mi
culture,
identidad.
my identity.
Todas las palabras que se
All the
enseñan o que
words
se
that are
dice en
taught,
una
that are
clase
said within a
también
class,
conlleva
they also
la
carry
definición cultural.
the cultural definition.
Entonces, para mí,
And
el
so for me,
enseñar el
teaching
idioma
the language, the Quiche language,
internacional o nacional
at an
es porque
international
estoy
or
dando a
national,
conocer cómo
it's because
somos
I'm
como
making it
pueblo maya,
know how we
cómo
are
somos
as a
como
Mayan
pueblo
people,
quiché,
how we are, who
costumbres,
we are as a Quiche
tradiciones,
people, customs,
la
traditions,
historia. Entonces,
history.
por eso es que
So that's
tomé esta
why
decisión de
I made the
enseñar,
decision of
porque quiero
teaching,
dar a conocer
because I
mi
want it to be
cultura
known.
y
I
mi
want my
identidad.
culture and my identity to be known.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful, thank you. So Professor Tahay, Dr. Megan shared with us an overview of what he calls colonial lingualism. So from your perspective, how has this colonial mindset affected the Quiche language?
Sí, bueno, escuchando al
Yes,
doctor
well,
Paul,
listening to Dr.
es
Paul,
cierto, y es lo
it's
que ha
true.
pasado
And
acá
that's
en
what's
Guatemala.
happened here in Guatemala.
Lastimosamente,
Unfortunately,
el idioma oficial
or
es el que
sadly, the
predomina
official language is
en
the
las
one that
escuelas.
predominates in schools.
Entonces, y
And
también
so
no hay
also
historia de los
there
pueblos
isn't a
indígenas.
history of the indigenous
En las
people.
escuelas se puede
In the
escuchar
schools, you
o
can
hablar un
hear,
poco sobre la
or you can
civilización maya.
speak a little bit about
Lo que
Mayan
dicen es,
civilization. And
bueno,
what
la
they say is,
civilización
well,
maya
Mayan
fue
civilization
una
was
civilización muy
a
grande,
very large
pero
civilization,
colapsó,
but it
murieron,
collapsed. They died.
desaparecieron.
They disappeared.
No se sabe qué fue lo que pasó.
It's
Esa
not
es la
known what
historia que
happened.
nos dan en las
That's the
escuelas.
story they teach
Pero
at the
en
schools.
realidad,
But in
los
reality,
pueblos mayas,
the Mayan people,
nosotros como pueblos
us
indígenas
as indigenous
existimos.
people, we
Y
exist.
los conocimientos de
And the
nuestros
knowledge
antepasados,
of
de
our
nuestros abuelos,
ancestors, of our
todavía
grandparents,
se ve en las
we still
comunidades hoy
see
día.
it in our communities today.
Alguien fuera
Someone
de Guatemala o
outside of
alguien de
Guatemala or
Guatemala
someone from
va
Guatemala
en pueblos rurales,
could go
puede
to
ver
some
cómo es la
rural
forma de
towns
vivir
and
de
see
los
what the
pueblos
way of
mayas.
life is of
La
the Mayan people,
comunicación de la
the
gente con la
communication
madre
of
naturaleza,
people with Mother
la
Nature,
importancia del
the
árbol, la
importance of the
importancia
tree,
del agua.
the importance of
Pero
the water.
lastimosamente,
But sadly,
esta mentalidad o
this
como bien decía el
mentality
doctor,
or
que
framework, or
usaron
as the
la
doctor said,
oficial para
that they use
discriminar
the official
los
language to
idiomas
discriminate
minoritarios,
against
los
the
idiomas
minority
indígenas.
languages and indigenous
Entonces,
languages.
ha afectado
So
la
it has
mentalidad de las personas.
affected
A
the
veces
people's point
nos
of view.
preguntamos
sometimes we ask
¿Por qué no
ourselves,
valora su idioma
why
indígena?
don't they
¿Por
value
qué
their
no
indigenous
no
language?
valora su
Why don't they
idioma maíz?
value the Mayan
¿Por qué?
language?
Porque desde el
Because
colonialismo se
because
les ha
from
hecho ver
colonialism,
que los
they
idiomas
have
indígenas, que el idioma
shown
quiché
that
no tiene
indigenous
ningún
languages,
valor.
Quiche language, doesn't have any value.
Discriminan a las
They
personas.
discriminate against people.
Nosotros no tenemos el acento
We
de
don't
un
have the
hablante nativo.
accent of a
Entonces, cuando
native
nos
speaker, so
escuchan
when they
hablar en
hear
el
us
idioma
speak
oficial,
in the official
escuchan que no
language, they can
tenemos ese
hear
acento.
that we don't have that
Entonces,
accent or
este
dialect.
también el
And
acento
so
también es
the
como
accent
un signo de burla,
is
de
also
discriminación
a
hacia la
point of
persona.
making fun of someone or discrimination
Lamentablemente,
against
esta
someone.
mentalidad
And sadly,
del
this mentality
colonialismo
of
también
colonialism also
está
is
afectando, porque muchas
affecting,
veces los padres prefieren
because
hablar en
often
el idioma
parents would
oficial
rather speak in
porque
the
no
official
quieren que
language
sus
because they
hijos
don't want their
sean
children
discriminados,
to be discriminated
porque no
against,
quieren que sus
because they
hijos
don't want their
sufran lo que
children
el
to
papá o la
suffer
mamá sufrieron.
what the dad or
Entonces
mom
hay que
suffered.
analizar muy
So
bien
one has to
cuando una
really
persona no
analyze
es
when
que esté
someone,
rechazando su
it's
idioma,
not that they're
no,
rejecting their
es el
language.
efecto
No,
del
it's the
colonialismo.
effect of
Entonces,
colonialism.
acá, si
And
el
so
pueblo maya,
here, if the Mayan
los
people
pueblos mayas
or
en
the Mayan
Guatemala
peoples
han
in
resistido
Guatemala have resisted
porque han soportado esa
because
discriminación,
they've suffered through
han
that
luchado
discrimination. They've fought
para que prevalezca el
to
idioma
prevail, for the
a
language to
través de
prevail
luchas.
through
Pero
struggle.
también ha
But
hecho
also,
efecto
there's been an
esta
effect,
mentalidad
this
o
point of
prejuicio
view
de que el
of
idioma indígena
prejudice
es menos
of
que el
the
oficial. Pero
the
no es
idea that
así.
the indigenous
Todos
language
los
is less than
idiomas
the
del
official
mundo
language,
son
but that's not the
importantes
case.
porque nos
Every language in the
transmiten
world is
historia,
important because they
nos
transmit
transmiten la
stories,
historia de cada
history.
pueblo.
They transmit the history of each
Muchas
people.
gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Tahay. So many great points. Thank you. And things for us to think about. I'm wondering what is your vision for how Quiche can be more valued in society, maybe also in higher education or government? What would that look like for Quiche to be more valued?
Bueno, para mí, para que el idioma
Well, for
quiché
me,
o
so
un
that
idioma indígena
the
sea
Quiche
valorado,
language or another
se
indigenous
necesita mucho
language is valued,
reforzar la
we
historia,
need to
la
strengthen the
cultura,
story, the culture,
porque yo puedo
because I
decir,
can say,
puedo enseñar el idioma,
I can teach a
pero si no
language,
hay historia,
but if there's
si
no
no hay
history,
como explicar la
if
cultura,
we don't
tradiciones,
explain the
costumbres,
culture, the
no hay una
traditions, the
conexión.
customs, there's no
Es muy
connection.
importante
It's very
enseñar
important
un
to be
idioma
able to
indígena, un
teach an
idioma maya,
indigenous language,
pero
a Mayan
también
language,
es
but also
importante
it's
hablar de la
important to
cultura,
speak to about the
hablar de lo que
culture,
piensa la
speak
gente,
about what
hablar
people
sobre la
think about,
cosmovisión,
speak about the
hablar sobre la
cosmovision,
indumentaria, porque la
think
indumentaria también
talk
nos
about the
identifica,
dressing and
hablar
the
de estos aspectos
what we wear.
en la
So
escuela,
these
hablarle a
aspects in the
los
school
niños
to
o
talk with the
hablar o el
kids
profesor hablarle a
or
sus
for the
estudiantes
teacher to
nacionales o
talk with their children,
internacionales.
whether
Para
they're
mí
national
es
or
muy
international.
importante
For me,
para que la
it's very
persona
important so that the
pueda
person
conectarse,
is able to
pueda
connect
entender
themselves,
por
is
qué
able
la
to
población
understand
maya
why the
tiene estas
Mayan
tradiciones,
population has
por
these
qué la
traditions.
población maya
Why
tiene
does
estas
a
costumbres.
Mayan population
Entender,
have these
pues hay
customs?
muchas
To be able to
palabras,
understand that.
hay muchas
There are a
palabras
lot
que
of
no
words,
tienen
a
una
lot of words
traducción
that don't
muy
have
literal al
a very
español,
literal
el
translation to
cual se
Spanish.
puede entender muy
And
bien
so from
cuando
that, you
uno
can
aprende el
understand
idioma.
when
Entonces,
somebody
tanto
learns a new
para
language.
personas
So both for
extranjeros, pero también
foreigners,
para
but
nosotros
also
como
for
pueblo
us
maya,
as a Mayan
entender
people
lo valioso
to
que
be
es
able to understand
nuestra
how
cultura,
valuable our
nuestra
culture is,
identidad.
our identity.
Entendiéndolo,
To be able to
podemos
understand all
valorar
that, we
y se
can
puede
value
valorar un idioma
and we can
y es una
value a
forma de
language,
revitalizarlo.
and it's a way to
Hay
revitalize it.
documentaciones, se puede sacar
There are
documentaciones, pero
documentations,
también hay que ir a la
but
práctica.
we also have to go to the
Hay que
practice.
involucrar a los
We
jóvenes
have
a
to
través de
involve the
la
young
cultura,
people through
a
the
través de
culture,
actividades,
through
se puede
activities.
involucrar a los jóvenes
That's
y
how we
de
can
esta
involve young
manera se
people.
puede
And through
revitalizar
that, we can revitalize a language, a Mayan language, or an indigenous language. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Tahay, for sharing your experience, your expertise, and just so many important points about how language is so much more than words, and all of the different forces that affect how language is valued and how people are treated. So thank you so much.